trying to keep up with how the world of work is changing.
Yeah, me too. Feels like every day there's something new. Well, today we're going deep on something that's not just changing where people work, but it's actually kind of reshaping like the whole economic landscape of our towns and cities.
Yeah.
Co-working spaces.
It's a pretty big deal, I think. You
Yeah.
know, we're past the point of just thinking about them as shared office space.
Yeah.
What's really interesting now is how these co-working places are acting as like real drivers of economic activity,
Yeah.
at the local level.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for this deep dive, we found some super interesting research and articles that really get into the nitty-gritty of the economic impact of co-working. And what we really want to do today, for everyone listening, is kind of go beyond that basic image of a desk and Wi-Fi.
Right, right.
We want to really get into how these spaces are functioning as real engines for local economic growth.
Yeah.
And, how they're actually contributing to the development of our communities. Yeah. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a way better idea of how these co-working hubs are creating jobs, supporting businesses, and even playing a part in revitalizing neighborhoods.
So, okay, let's get into it. I was really surprised to learn that a huge percentage of small and medium businesses, those SMEs we always hear about, almost 38% globally, are actually using co-working spaces.
Wow, it's a big chunk.
Yeah, and startups are right behind them at about 27%. So that really shows you who's embracing this model.
It really does. And I think it's crucial to consider why these types of businesses, these ventures, why they're so drawn to these spaces in the first place. I mean, they provide essential infrastructure, right? Things like high-speed internet, which we all need, meeting rooms, so you can actually have a professional place to meet clients or investors.
Yeah, you don't want to meet in a Starbucks every time.
Exactly, exactly. And, even just a legitimate business address, so you're not using your home address on your website or business cards. But it's not just the physical stuff, it's more than that.
Yeah, the articles we read definitely highlighted the networking opportunities and also the mentorship that happens naturally in these spaces. I mean, you can just picture it, right? You have a founder of a new tech company just casually chatting with someone who's, been there, done that.
Right.
In the shared kitchen or something. And those informal chats can be so valuable.
They can. And that kind of support and, just bumping into people and making those connections, they directly translate into tangible benefits for the local economy. It's not just some feel-good thing. A growing startup, maybe one that got its start in a co-working space, well, they're way more likely to hire local talent.
Makes sense.
Which immediately helps to reduce unemployment rates in the area.
Yep.
And then those people who just got hired, they have more money to spend. And they're going to spend it at businesses in the area, right?
Right, the coffee shop, the bookstore, the restaurant.
It's all interconnected. It creates this upward cycle.
Oh, it's that ripple effect, right? I like that. And our sources talked about how this kind of thing contributes to a more diverse local economy. And I think, importantly, a more resilient one. If one specific industry takes a hit, a community that has a bunch of different, smaller and more flexible businesses,
Right.
they're much better equipped to handle it.
Right, they can weather the storm.
Exactly.
Instead of having all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, with just one or two big companies, a bunch of smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Innovative companies is way more stable in the long run.
Yeah, like a strong foundation. So let's zoom in on job creation specifically. One thing the articles explained is how co-working spaces support the growth and expansion of small businesses. I mean, that just makes sense. And of course, that leads to more job opportunities in the area.
Yeah.
And something we found really interesting was this idea of boutique co-working spaces.
Oh, yeah, those are fascinating. They cater to really specific niches. Think about a co-working space that's only for creative professionals. Maybe they have a photography studio built in, or sound recording booths.
Oh, cool.
Or one for tech startups that has all the fancy hardware and software they need.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
These spaces, they attract a specific kind of talent pool, right? And that creates a demand for very specific services nearby, say, a co-working space full of designers.
Yeah.
Well, you might see more freelance graphic designers setting up shop nearby, or more marketing consultants, that sort of thing.
I see. So it's not just the jobs inside the co-working space itself.
Right.
It's this whole web of other businesses that pop up around it.
Exactly. It's that multiplier effect. It's planting a seed. And not only does the seed grow, but it helps the plants around it grow, too.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Okay, so one of the most compelling things we read about was the cost savings. The reduction in overhead for businesses that choose to use co-working spaces. They basically bundle everything, you rent, utilities, the equipment, even maintenance into one fee,
Right.
and they have these flexible memberships.
Yeah, and if you've ever, like, tried to get a traditional office space set up, the costs can be crazy. You've got these long leases, you've got to put down deposits for utilities, and then there's just the constant upkeep and
Oh,
maintenance.
yeah, yeah,
Co-working spaces basically eliminate that initial hurdle,
right.
especially for those early stage companies that are watching every penny.
Yeah.
It frees up so much money that they can put back into growing their actual business.
So they can focus on their product or their marketing or, hiring the right people.
Exactly. And that leads to expansion and hiring even more people.
Hmm.
And as our source had pointed out, this affordability, this lower cost, it really lowers the barrier to entry for new businesses.
Yeah.
So more people can actually take the leap and start something new.
It's huge.
And that means more diverse businesses, more ideas, more innovation in the local economy.
And it's not all about the money. Our sources also talked about the productivity boosts that can come with co-working, being in a dynamic, collaborative environment, having access to shared resources.
Right.
That can really improve a team's output.
Absolutely. I think there's often like this palpable energy in co-working spaces,
Mhm.
this like cross-pollination of ideas that's hard to replicate in a tiny office somewhere,
Right.
when you're isolated, and that increased efficiency that directly benefits the area.
Makes sense. Now, this next part I thought was super interesting, how co-working spaces can actually impact local real estate.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like they often take these underutilized buildings, like maybe an old warehouse or an office building that's been empty forever. Right.
And they give it new life.
And it's a super visible impact too, right? I mean, suddenly a building that's been sitting there empty, maybe even kind of bringing down the whole look of the neighborhood,
Yeah.
becomes this busy hub.
Yeah.
There's more foot traffic, and that drives up demand for the whole area.
And I think it's interesting that it's not just the co-working space itself that goes up in value,
Right.
but the properties around it too, both residential and commercial, the whole neighborhood.
Yeah. And you have all these professionals moving in, web developers, entrepreneurs,
Oh,
designers.
wow. Yeah, yeah.
They want to live and work in these cool, revitalized areas.
And then you get more restaurants and coffee shops and stores opening up.
Exactly, all the things that make a neighborhood more attractive.
So it really is like the co-working space is the anchor.
Mm-hmm.
That kicks off this whole process of redevelopment.
It's about creating that whole ecosystem, where all the different parts feed into each other. Yeah, I like that. So our sources also talked about how co-working spaces are good at attracting talent,
Mm.
keeping skilled professionals in an area. It seems like they're seen as these really dynamic, creative spaces that people are drawn to.
Yeah, and especially if you think about the way millennials and Gen Z think about work. Flexibility, being independent, having a sense of community.
Right.
Co-working spaces really cater to all of that.
Yeah. You think about that traditional office environment that can be like stuffy, and then you have these like bright, modern co-working spaces.
Yeah.
It's way more appealing.
But it goes beyond just how it looks.
Yeah.
Our sources talked a lot about the opportunities for networking and collaboration,
Right.
like these melting pots of people from all different backgrounds and with all different skills.
So you're always learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really appealing if you're someone who wants to grow their career.
And for companies, being near a co-working space gives them access to all that talent.
Absolutely. They can tap into those bright minds without having to hire everyone full time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes them more adaptable, and it creates a more dynamic workforce for the whole area.
Makes sense. And that kind of leads us into this idea of inclusivity and accessibility.
Right.
Our research really emphasized how co-working spaces give more people access to professional work environments.
Yeah. It levels the playing field.
Yeah, because they're way more affordable and flexible than those traditional office leases.
Definitely. And, for a lot of people, especially smaller businesses or freelancers, it's the only way they could have access to things like a really reliable internet connection, a good conference room, or just a professional setting to work in.
Yeah. And there's so many different membership plans.
Oh, yeah, tons. So whether you need a desk every day or just want to pop in a few times a month,
Yeah, yeah.
there's an option that works.
And a lot of them are in really convenient locations too, right?
Yeah, in cities, suburbs,
Mm.
close to public transportation. And as we saw in our research, some are even open 24/7.
which is perfect for remote workers.
Exactly. Or people working across different time zones.
So it's making work accessible to so many more people.
Right, and that means more economic activity for the whole community.
More innovation, more jobs. Okay, let's talk about something really cool. This idea that co-working spaces are like incubators for innovation and collaboration.
Yeah, this is where the magic happens, right? You
Yeah.
get all these professionals, from different industries with different skill sets, all working in the same place.
Right.
It creates this environment where new ideas can just spark up.
You can picture like two people just chatting by the coffee machine, and suddenly they have this amazing idea for a new product or
Yeah,
service. That might never have happened if they hadn't bumped into each other.
exactly. And our sources talked about how all those interactions, all those shared experiences, that's what helps people develop their skills and come up with these amazing collaborative projects.
It's like you're not just sharing a space,
Right.
you're sharing knowledge and ideas. And a lot of these spaces have mentorship programs, right?
Yeah.
And networking events.
Hmm.
So it's like a built-in support system for entrepreneurs and startups.
And even beyond the formal stuff, just
Yeah.
being around other people who are doing their own thing,
Yeah.
there's so much mutual support.
Right.
People sharing referrals, maybe even starting little partnerships. That's invaluable.
Yeah. And there was this one statistic that really stuck with me. 80% of people who use co-working spaces said they rely on their peers for help.
Wow.
And 64% said they've gotten freelance work or new clients through those connections.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like it's not just a place to work,
Yeah.
it's a community.
Okay, last but not least, the impact on well-being.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources talked about how co-working spaces can actually help people feel better, be more productive, and enjoy their work more.
Makes sense. Right. When you have a better balance in your life, you're probably going to be more engaged in your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of these spaces offer workshops and seminars, skill sharing sessions, so people are always learning new things.
Yeah. It's really important these days to stay on top of things.
Yeah.
Because everything's changing so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that 59% of people in co-working spaces said they've learned new skills since joining.
That's amazing.
And it's not just formal learning either.
Right.
More and more co-working spaces are offering things like fitness centers, meditation rooms,
Oh, wow.
wellness programs.
It's not just about work.
Right. It's about taking care of yourself.
And even things like having good ergonomic furniture, lots of natural light,
Right.
maybe some plants.
That all makes a difference.
It can really reduce stress.
Yeah. And something we shouldn't forget is that for a lot of people who work remotely or freelance, it can get lonely.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Co-working spaces provide that social interaction that you're missing when you're working from home all the time.
Yeah. And they often have like social events and stuff, right?
So you can really get to know the other people.
Yeah. And you know what? Almost 90% of people using co-working spaces reported feeling happier overall.
Wow.
That's a huge testament to the positive impact they're having.
It really is. And, happier people tend to be more productive.
Exactly. So the big takeaway here is that co-working spaces are about so much more than just having a place to plug in your laptop.
Right.
It's about bringing energy and opportunity into communities in all these different ways.
Absolutely. They're supporting businesses, creating jobs, revitalizing neighborhoods, making it easier for people to connect, and ultimately helping people feel better and be more successful.
It's all connected. So taking all that into account, what do you think is next for co-working? How will they continue to change the way we work and live?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely a trend to watch. I mean, we're seeing a real shift in how we think about work and community, and co-working spaces are right at the center of that.
We're definitely going to keep an eye on it. And hopefully this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of how impactful these spaces really are. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the topics that matter most to you.